Good morning, students. So, this is Physics, Class 12th, Chapter number 5 and Lecture number 5. In this lecture, we'll be studying about hysteresis curve. Okay, so the hysteresis curve is a BH curve which represents the behavior of a ferromagnetic material as it is taken through a cycle of magnetization. That is, if we take a ferromagnetic material and if we take it through a cycle of magnetization and we draw a BH curve for it, then that curve will be known as hysteresis curve. For example, look at this curve. This is a BH curve. Such type of a curve for a ferromagnetic material is called a hysteresis curve. Now let us see what the various things represent. Okay, so O is a point where B is also 0 and H is also 0. Okay, as you know, B is magnetic induction and H is magnetizing force. Okay, so at O, B and H both are 0. Okay, now what we do, we take the ferromagnetic material and if we pass the current or if we increase the current, okay, by putting it in a solenoid or anything, okay, if we increase the current, so B and H both will increase. So this is representing that B and H both are increasing. Okay, so now as you can see here, when we come at this point when H is increasing, B is still same, it is not increasing. This position determines the alignment of all the dipoles present in ferromagnetic material. Okay, so as you know, there are domain in ferromagnetic materials. When they are put in external magnetic field, they get aligned in the direction of that. So this position shows that all those domains have already aligned in the direction of magnetic field. Therefore, now magnetic field will not increase anymore. Okay, so this is OA. At this point, B and H both were 0. When we increased current, B and H increased. And at this point, due to alignment of all the dipoles, value of B saturates. Okay, so now if we decrease the current, when we'll decrease the current, again B and H will go on decreasing. We reached at a point B. Now as you can see at this point, H has become 0, but there is still some value of B left in the spaceman. So this value OB is called retentivity. That is, value of magnetic field B left in the spaceman even when H is reduced to 0 is called retentivity. Okay, so here, because at this point H is 0, we have still have some value of B, that is OB. So this OB is called retentivity. Okay, now at this point, to reduce this retentivity to 0, we apply the current in reverse direction. So okay, so this point represents that the current is reversed and it is then increased. So we will reach a point C where retentivity has completely reduced to 0. So now this OC can be defined as corrosivity. So how we can corrosivity now? The value of H that is to be applied in opposite direction to reduce retentivity to 0 is called corrosivity. That is, we have to apply this much OC in opposite direction so that this retentivity reduces to 0. So therefore this value is called corrosivity. Okay, because at C retentivity has completely reduced to 0. Now if we increase this current, again we will get the same pattern as we got here. So we will go in this direction. Again B is increasing, H is increasing. Again this D point will come. That means now alignment of dipoles is there again. All the dipoles, so B will saturate. So again now we decrease that reversed current. We will reach a point E. Now this is the retentivity. To reduce this retentivity, we have to reverse the current and apply it. So at this point again retentivity will reduce to 0. So this will become corrosivity and therefore the cycle will go through the same you can say it will follow same path. Okay, so again I am repeating it. At this point B and H both are 0. As now if we increase the current, B and H will increase. At A all the domains will align in the direction of B, so magnetic field B will saturate. Then we decrease the current, we get retentivity. To reduce this retentivity to 0, we reverse the current and then increase it. That means this is corrosivity, and then again we are increasing this reverse current. So we will get the same pattern again and again. Okay, so this is your hysteresis curve. Okay, so now we will define some more terms from this curve. The first is hysteresis. Now as we have seen in this loop that B was lagging behind H. That is, even when H was 0, B was not 0. So the phenomena of lagging B behind H when a spaceman is taken through a cycle of magnetization is called hysteresis, And area under this BH curve gives you the total loss of energy that takes place due to the magnetization. Okay, so these are another two terms. Now there are two ferromagnetic materials, steel and soft iron. It was seen that the BH curve for the steel and soft iron look like this. So this red curve shows you the BH curve for soft iron, and this pink curve shows you the BH curve for steel. Now as you can see here, retentivity is higher for soft iron and corrosivity is higher for steel. Okay, it is clear from this loop only. Okay, so due to these properties, steel is preferred for making permanent magnets because steel has high corrosivity. If it has high corrosivity, that means we have to apply more force to demagnetize it or to make magnetic field induction to be zero. Therefore, it is preferred as permanent magnet because it loses its magnetization not easily. Okay. Next is soft iron, which is used for making electromagnets. This is because, as you know, it has low corrosivity. As we have seen here, it has low corrosivity. That means as soon as the current is stopped, B will reduce to 0. Therefore, it is used as electromagnet, and steel is preferred for making permanent magnets. Okay, so the next topic is if magnet is in SHM in uniform magnetic field. Okay, so as you know, when a magnet is placed in a magnetic field, it experiences a torque which is equals to mb sine theta. If we are considering that value of theta is very small, then you can say sine theta is nearly equal to theta. So torque will become minus mb theta. Okay, and this negative force is due to the restoring force, because this torque will be the restoring torque which will try to align the dipole in its position. Okay, so we are taking it as to be restoring torque, so it will be minus mb theta. Now as you know, torque is equals to I alpha also. Okay, so now from these two equations, I alpha is equals to minus mb theta. Okay, so from here we can calculate alpha, which will come to be minus mb theta upon I. Okay, now as you know, in SHM, value of acceleration is minus omega square x. And if it is angular, then it will be alpha is equals to minus omega square theta. Now, if you compare these two equations, you will get the value of omega to be mb upon I. Sorry, omega square to be mb upon I. So, omega will come to be under root mb upon I. Okay. Now, if we want to calculate time period, now as you know, the formula of time period in SHM is 2 pi under root displacement upon acceleration. That is 2 pi under root displacement is theta upon acceleration, and acceleration is mb theta upon I. That is mb theta upon I. Theta will cancel out, so you will get the value of time period to be 2 pi under root I upon mb. And if we want to calculate nu from it, as you know, nu is just inverse of t, so it will be 1 by t, that is 1 upon 2 pi under root of mb by I. Okay, so this is the magnet when it is placed in uniform magnetic field and it is undergoing SHM motion. Okay. Okay, so the next topic is bar magnet as solenoid. Okay, suppose we have a solenoid which is of length 2L. This line shows its midpoint, and let us suppose this is a point P whose distance from the midpoint is R, and the radius of the coils in this solenoid is A. Okay, so now what we'll do, we'll just consider a small portion of the solenoid of thickness dx and distance x from the center, and then we will calculate magnetic field due to this portion, and then we will integrate it for the whole solenoid. Okay, so before doing that, let us calculate magnetic moment. As you know, magnetic moment is defined as NIA, where N is number of turns. So now small n is number of turns per unit length, and total length is 2L. So small n will be equal to n by 2L, or you can calculate capital N from here. That will come to be n into 2L. Okay, so keep it here. Now, as you know, we have studied the value of magnetic field on the axis of a coil. That formula came to be mu naught upon 4 pi 2n pi ia square upon a square plus r square to the power 3 by 2. This we have derived in previous formulas. Okay, so now if we want to write this formula for this coil which we have taken of thickness dx, because its thickness is dx, so we'll be writing db for it. So for that, now mu naught upon 4 pi. Achha, before that, for this solenoid, what will be the number of turns? That will be equal to n into dx. That is number of turns per unit length into dx, because dx is its width Okay, so dB is mu naught upon 4 pi to n is n into dx. So that is n into dx. Rest is same, pi ia square upon a is same, radius. Now what will be the value of r for this solenoid? See, r, if you remember in that r is the distance of the coil from the point where we want to calculate magnetic field. So here this is that distance. So to calculate this distance, this will be equal to r minus x. So here this will be equal to r minus x whole square. Okay. So now, okay, so remember this is the general formula for a coil and this is the formula for solenoid which we will be using now. Okay. So now integrating it, so mu naught upon 4 pi 2n pi ia square, all are constant, they will come outside, and we are integrating it from dx upon a square plus r minus x whole square to the power 3 by 2. Now what will be the limits? So as we want to calculate magnetic field for whole solenoid, so limits will be minus L2 plus L, because the length is 2L, that means it is minus L2 plus L. So integrating it will give you minus L2 plus L. Okay, now if we apply the condition, if r is very greater than a as well as L, then a and x both can be neglected in that case. So that means a and x both are neglected. That will give you r square to the power 3 by 2. 2 will again cancel out, so it will give you r cube. Okay, so now if you put the value again in denominator, value of this in denominator, you will get mu naught upon 4 pi 2n pi ia square. R cube will come outside because it is now constant. Now integrating dx from minus L to plus L will give you upper limit minus lower limit. That will give you 2L. So B will come to be mu naught upon 4 pi 2n pi ia square into 2L upon R cube. Now, as we have written before, M magnetic moment is NIA. Now look clearly, N into 2L is capital N. This is I, and pi a square is area. That is N, capital N, I into A. So this is nothing but magnetic moment. So we can write it as mu naught upon 4 pi 2m upon R cube. Okay, so from this we can see this is the same value as we have obtained on the axial line of a magnetic on the axial line of a magnet. So we can say the solenoid and magnet are equivalent to each other when we talk about the axis. So we can, as we can see, the formula is coming to be same. Okay, so from this we can conclude the bar magnet is equivalent to solenoid. Okay. Okay students, so now I'll be discussing the homework solutions of the question that was given to you in lecture number 4. Okay, so let us start with the question number 23. It says that a sample of paramagnetic salt contains 2 into 10 to the power 24 atomic dipoles, each of magnetic moment 1.5 into 10 to the power minus 23 joule per Tesla. That is number of dipoles and magnetic moment is given to you. So from this you can calculate total magnetic moment, that will be Nm. So it will, when you multiply them, you will get 30 joule per Tesla. Okay, so after that the question says the sample is placed under a homogeneous magnetic field of 0.64 Tesla, that is B1 is 0.64 Tesla, and cooled to a temperature of 4.2 Kelvin, and T1 is given to be 4.2 Kelvin. After that the question says the degree of magnetic saturation achieved is equal to 15%. So now if only the saturation is achieved to 15%, that means effective dipole moment will be 15% of this. So if you will calculate 15% of 30, you will get 4.5 joule per Tesla. Okay, so after that the question says what is the total dipole magnetic moment of the sample for a magnetic field of 0.98 Tesla and a temperature of 2.8 Kelvin. That is B2 is given to be 0.98 Tesla and T2 is given to be 2.8 Kelvin. Okay, so if I use Curie's law, as you know, chi m is equals to C by T, and also you have studied I by H is equals to 1 by T. So that means 1 by T we can write it as I by H also. Okay, because C is a constant. From here you can calculate I to be CH upon T. Okay, so now you, as you know, I is nothing but magnetic moment per unit volume, because I is intensity of magnetization, that is magnetic moment per unit volume. C and T as it is, and as we have studied, B is equals to mu H. So H will come to be B by mu. So we have write it as B by mu. Okay. Now V is constant, mu is constant. So we can say M is directly proportional to CB by T, and C is also a constant. So we can say M is directly proportional to B by T. Okay, so now if you will use 1 and 2 terms, then you will get M2 upon M1 to be equal to B2 upon T1 upon B1 upon T2. Now you know all these values and you know M1 as well as they are given in question. So just put all these values and calculate value of M2. You will get your answer. Okay. Okay, so the next is 16th question. Its first part says, why does a paramagnetic sample display greater magnetization when cooled? Okay, so when temperature is decreased, that means random thermal motion will also decrease. Now, as you know, in a paramagnetic material, each atom has its permanent dipole magnetic moment, but due to their random motion, it was considered to be zero. Now, if thermal random motion is decreasing, that means some part of the dipole moment will not get cancelled. So therefore, as we decrease the temperature, the magnetization gets greater because alignment of dipoles will not be that much random as in case of increased temperature. Okay. Okay, the second part says, why is diamagnetism almost independent of temperature? Now, as you know, in diamagnetism, each atom has paired electrons, and that paired electrons, their magnetic moment get cancelled out. That means each electron is not having a magnetic dipole. So if each atom is not a magnetic dipole, then obviously it will not depend on temperature. Either you reduce temperature or increase temperature. As they don't have any dipole moment initially, therefore there will be no effect of temperature. Okay. Okay, so the C part says, if a toroid uses bismuth, will the field of core be greater or less? See, because bismuth is a diamagnetic material, that means in that magnetization will be in opposite direction of magnetic field. So if you put bismuth in the core, then that means there will be less magnetic field in the core. Okay. Okay, so the D part says, is the permeability of a ferromagnetic material independent of magnetic field? So its answer is no, because as I have told you, susceptibility of a ferromagnetic material is inversely proportional to temperature. That means, and mu r is 1 plus chi. If chi is depending on temperature, then that means mu will also depend on it. Okay. Okay, so the next part says, magnetic field lines are always nearly normal to the surface of ferromagnet at every point. And this fact is analogous to the static electric field lines being normal to the surface of a conductor at every point. Why? Okay, so its answer would be because magnetic field lines bend more for a ferromagnetic material, so the angle will become almost 90 degree. Suppose if we had a paramagnetic material, in those bending of magnetic field lines is not that much, so angle will be less than 90 degrees. Okay. Okay, so the next part of the question says, would the maximum possible magnetization of a paramagnetic sample be of the same order of magnitude as the magnetization of the ferromagnet? So the answer is yes. Maximum possible magnetization in both the materials, that is paramagnetic sample or ferromagnetic sample, will be same, but to acquire that value, very high magnetization is required, which is not possible or which is very hard to achieve. Okay, although they can have same value, but that is hard to achieve. Okay, students, so your chapter number 5 is completed. Now you can do rest of the questions of your chapter. Thank you.